And all the federales say they could have had him any day. They only let him hang around out of kindness, I suppose. And Lefty, he can't sing the blues.
Townes Van Zandt was an American country singer-songwriter. He was much praised for his songwriting, but he wasn't particularly commercially successful as an artist. Some of his songs have been recorded by much higher profile people. He lived generally quite simply and struggled with addictions for quite a lot of his life, particularly later life. He released his first studio album in 1968. He released 5 more over the next 3 years, but then slowed down. By the time he died in 1997 of substance-related health issues, he had released 4 more albums, but there have been 6 more albums released since his death. Hi, my name's Dan. So this album was the 6th album by Townes Van Zandt. It was the last one of his early prolific stretch, and it's my first time listening to this album, but I have heard of him. I didn't know a lot about him before I started to read some up. So the album's named The Late Great Townes Van Zandt, and apparently this was a bid to try and get interest in him in terms of trying to spread a rumour that he's dead, in kind of off the back of the Paul is dead rumours from the Beatles. So let's do some description. I would say that it's quite hard to not describe this as country. You've got to use the word country here. But it's not, I wouldn't say, slap bang commercial country, and especially for the time that it was released. A lot of country at that time was, kind of felt very mainstream, and I say commercial. This has a bit more of a blues and folk edge at times, I would say. And it involves, a decent amount of guitar picking. It's got certainly some sound of what I collectively call resophonic guitars. The 2 main makes of that are dobro and national guitar, and you might have seen them. They're the ones with the kind of metal bit in the middle. It's got a mandolin in here. There's a fiddle as well. There's definitely some lap steel slide here. There were times that I felt like I'm glad I wasn't the bassist for this album, because it's quite dull bass-wise. It's just the tonic and the dominant boom, 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 and boom, boom, boom. Very kind of country style in that. His singing is a very country delivery, the accent and the ornamentation that he uses. But one of my criticisms of country generally is that it can be quite nasal, and this isn't that nasal. And it's also like a reasonable amount of, it doesn't feel too superficial. It feels like it's got a reasonable feel for what he's singing about. And it's, so there is some kind of, the songs generally quite sad stuff. It's kind of thoughtful at times. Some are quite straightforward, some are more unusual. So there are a few covers on here. There's Don't Let the Sunshine Fool You, which is written by Guy Clark. Now I recognise that. There's Honky Tonkin' by Hank Williams. I recognise that. And me recognising country songs means they must be pretty high profile, because it's really not my bread and butter. There's a track that I didn't recognise called Fraulein by Lawton Williams, apparently, which is more cheerful than some of the other songs on the album. And I quite like that as well. There's a track called German Mustard, which is just Townes Van Zandt singing and a guy called Rocky Hill, great name, playing the guitar. But it's a resophonic guitar with a slide, with a nice kind of blues sound to it. There's speculation that the words might have been improvised on the spot when they were singing that. So interesting. Probably the best known song on this album is Poncho and Lefty, which a song of his that was covered by other people in a high-profile way. I think probably my favourite song was the last song on the album, which is called Heavenly Houseboat Blues, which is a bit odd, and I like it for it. It's about this houseboat that he's building that's kind of made of silver and gold, and there's a line in it, it ain't so much for floating or something like that, or for sailing. It's like basically it sinks. But it's an interesting song. Generally, um, yeah, it's gone down better with me than Some Country, certainly than Some Country of that time period. It feels like it's got more authenticity. It's not massively over emotional. There are some songs that are edging towards the word mawkish is the one that I love for describing this, and it's not particularly that. So I quite enjoyed it. I think I probably would still have enjoyed it more if his singing was less country, even though it wasn't nasal. So that's what I think. I'd love to know what you think. So please do hit me up with a comment through the comments box. And that's it from me for now.
Well, I'm building a houseboat in heaven to sail them deep and holy seas. Well, I'm building a houseboat